China's military is reportedly building full-scale replicas of U.S. warships and key buildings in Taiwan to rehearse a potential invasion. Satellite images analyzed by The Telegraph show mock-ups of Taiwan's presidential office, U.S. fighter jets, and warships, as well as a U.S. naval base in Japan. Analysts say the replicas are being used to test long-range strike capabilities and rehearse assaults on key Taiwanese government sites. Taiwan's defense ministry says it's aware of the replicas and has contingencies in place against any potential attacks. For more on what these upgraded desert targets reveal about Beijing's military strategy, reporter Reece Ayers spoke to Bryce Barros, a visiting fellow at the Institute for National Defense and Security Research.
China used to build flat 2D outlines in the desert, but building these full-scale 3D replicas of buildings and destroyers, what does that tell us about how their military tech and their strategy is evolving?
I think it sort of fits into a broader trend of realistic training, or as realistic as possible training for the PLA for any sort of contingency, and understanding that they might want to do, sort of like rehearsals on what points of the vessel might be most vulnerable to attack. Like having that 3D sort of setup allows for that in a way that a 2D mock-up doesn't. And it also sort of like prepares troops to understand, okay, this is actually what you're going to be potentially attacking or what have you. What's really interesting about them using the Arleigh Burke is it is also the sort of basis for similar vessels that are operated by the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force and the Republic of Korea Navy. So there's obviously a U.S. sort of implication for this, but it also has implications for just broader sort of like allied responses to any sort of contingency in the region.
These sites in Xinjiang and in Mongolia, they're fully visible to commercial satellites. So is this purely a testing ground, or, is Beijing intentionally sending a deterrent signal to Washington and Taipei and maybe other folks in the region?
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that, right? So the way that the United States, I want to emphasize this is how Americans define deterrence within the Department of Defense is the 3 C's, right? So capabilities, credibility, and communication. This would fit into the last part of that, right? And that's supposed to build the credibility to help deter the United States and allies from intervening in any sort of situation across the Indo-Pacific.
And if China perfects its ability to strike US naval escorts in the Western Pacific, how does that change the math for US intervention in Taiwan Strait contingency?
I think there's a general understanding from both militaries, and this is also heightened by what you've seen with Iran, that you're not going to be able to operate in areas without some kind of like air defense, for example. So showing that they have like a longer range capability to be able to strike outside of that to U.S. forces or allied forces that are very, very far out in the Pacific.
That was Bryce Barros from INDSR.